Scott Shuttleman Phillips, he's the guy that toured the country, basically. I don't know if you did every state like the lawn mowing guy, but you went around a lot for this Remove Before Flight book. Yep. And you've made models for a bunch of these astronauts and other people involved in the space program. So you've been around the block a little bit. And probably you're one of the better, I guess, barometers of what do you think's going on out there right now. Today's election day, big turnout.
Yeah.
Trump drew big crowds.
Yeah.
Joe's, I don't know. They always say this is the most consequential election in our history.
Oh, yeah.
Do you believe it is?
Well, I tell you, I came by our polling place coming here today, and, of course, the lines are already starting to form. It was like 5:30 in the morning, so 6 o'clock. So I think we're going to see something we've never seen before. Before we get started, I do want to talk a little bit of politics. Of course, obviously the space program is hinging upon the fact of the outcome. We either go back to the moon under this administration or we go wherever, a bridge to nowhere under another. But I'd like to say hi to my wife, Diane. I love you. And Richard, thanks for listening. But I'm going to kind of start out, if I can, is to say, something philosophical, and I think we all know this, that hard times create good men. Good men create good times. Good times create bad men, and bad men create hard times. So we're in this cycle now. Of course, that's not...
we get lazy.
We're protecting.
Slangy way of saying
well, what we have done is we've protected the next generation from the hard times in the sense that we may pay their way and make it easier on them. And
then it may blow up anyway because we've prepared them for failure because they don't know how to deal with it.
In a way we have, because we would look at our life as older gentlemen, that the fact that we came up the hard way and the things that we have today we earned and worked for, and so here again we're in that cycle where the good times now is breeding bad people. And I generalize, but bad people do breed hard times. It's coming. And But me being in the space business, I kind of wrote down, I've been writing some white papers, of course, with the COVID shutdown, I've been writing more. And so I've been thinking a little bit longer and about this political environment that we find ourselves into. Back during the moon program, we had what we call engine instability. In other words, when Von Braun was developing the F-1 engine to go to the moon, they were blowing engines up, and because they had what they call engine instability. And so the fuel in the tanks were rushing out so fast through the head of the engine that it was disorienting inside the engine compartment, and when they would ignite it, it would blow the engine up. So they needed to find a way of organizing that high pressure fluid coming out of the engine to make it run perfectly. So what I've coined today is what I call we're in a political instability, with hate being the fuel and misinformation. So unfortunately, we have a way, that when we ignite that political environment, we're getting the chaos that we're seeing today. We're getting factions where some people are against other people and so on and so forth. So it used to be back in the day, when we had political disagreements, that we would understand each other's points. But I was brought up in the world of debate, and I debated a lot. But what the first lesson, anybody that knows about debate, is that you actually go to the lowest common denomination. 4 + 4 is 8. You both agree to that. And then you ratchet it up to another agreement. And then you go in for the disagreement. And then you hash those out. But if you develop those disagreements, they'll have respect. So an issue might be an issue that's higher, 4 + 4 is 8. Yeah, I agree with that. Hey, we all believe in oxygen, clean air, clean water. Yeah, I agree with that. So upon those premises, then when you debate, when you say something heavier, like an abortion situation, Whereas you could say, well, I had an abortion as a woman because I financially couldn't carry on to have a family. I was very young, and I needed to do that. That was my only option. But then my standpoint is I'm against that in a way that I would say, well, I wouldn't have a family because I adopted my 2 boys because the lady that provided that for us didn't abort the 2 boys. So the fact is we could walk away as friends, understanding each other's positions, and not to say one's right over another one's, but it's a point in time in life. So we need to come together that way.
But we don't want to talk to each other anymore.
Well,
because there is no, you got to have debate. You have to have the ability to do what you just said. And if you do, the problem is, I think you have some people involved in the debate that don't have any facts. Right. And their fallback is just, well, you're a racist.
Yeah, well, it's a misinformation. It's
crazy. Yeah. We've gotten to a point where it's just nuts.
Right.
Anyway, Scott Shuttleman Phillips, who's with us for the. If you haven't seen the book or read the book or seen the pictures and all that, there's stuff in there that's just awesome. You can still get it. We'll talk more with Scott. He's with us for the hour. Stick around. Scott Shuttleman Phillips joining us for the hour on this election day. Take your patience and your own pen. Have you voted already?
No. In fact, I told Diane that I would pick her up after the interview and we would vote together because this is historical. This is actually, if you remember, this is September 10th. Today is really September 10th. We don't really know what 9/11 really means, what the result of this is going to be. So we were, I went to work and did all kinds of things and was busy and wasn't even really thinking about the distress this country would be under the
very next day.
The very next day. Yeah. So really today represents today. September 10th.
Well, here I am reading something and we talked about this. Scotty, didn't we bring this up Friday? I think we did because I had heard about it the first time. 300 National Guard troops are currently on alert in preparation of some civil disorder. 1,000 troops in Massachusetts, 300 in Illinois. No, 300. Yeah, 300 undisclosed number in Illinois and Oregon. 300 in Arizona. As I understand, these are military police units. And they're expected to have at least 3,300 Guard troops have been committed to the effort. And they've also authorized 1,000 in Texas, 1,000 in Massachusetts, and even Wyoming. They've got somebody who's been called up. It says one soldier. What?
Yeah.
No, this says a single soldier in Wyoming. It's crazy. But anyway, I don't know that in an election, and they're also talking about Nebraska, Tennessee, Washington, Wisconsin. This all going on yesterday. I don't think we would have ever read a story like this before any other election. Do you?
Well, I've been around a while, and I was, my first dealings with the president was when Nixon, of course, I was alive during the Kennedy thing, but Nixon, came through our town one time, and so I saw a president for the first time in my life, and I never ever thought, my father was he's gone now, but my dad was very patriotic, and he really taught his kids, all 5 of us, that our duty, of course, was to, have our voice known through the voting process. So really, we religiously and as a family, but I noticed this next generation appears to take on an apathy element, thinking that everything's the same and it really no ramifications. But as we know, elections do have consequences, and this does, to me, feel a watershed year, because I think this decides which way we go as a nation, and it would certainly be different if we go one side to the other. So there's more contrast to this election than I've ever seen.
You've been a lot of places,
yes,
and some people would say into the belly of the beast, into some of these states that people think are so blue.
Oh, I know, yeah.
But we're all Americans, right?
Well, here's the thing. Why we have the problems we have is we've lost our sense of commonality. In other words, when we meet somebody on the street, my thought is to find what's common. In other words, we're all physically maybe the same height or the weight or age or whatever, but we always find somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. And so our job is really to find a commonality. And we actually let the press whip us up because they want access. They want their limousines and their food and their access. And the politicians are just using us as pawns. We're really actually falling into their hands. So,
do you remember the first, because they did the sequels and they weren't as good,
right?
But the Bruce Willis movie about the tower and
what was
the name of that? Die Hard.
Die Hard, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how his wife punches the reporter right at the end for whipping everybody into a frenzy.
Well, sure, they have that power to do that, and of course we live in such a connected world today that people are listening more, and it used to be in our day we'd wait until the 6 o'clock news, we'd get the news then, but today we have it 24/7. There's a whipping motion. There's people that are that can fall prey to a storm coming, and they get all nervous and all upset. But I think the politics today is using us.
You're on social media. I'm on social media.
Yeah.
You promote a lot of the wood stuff you do, and
sure.
I throw a bomb occasionally just in social media just to kind of get a reaction going.
Right.
But at the same time, I look at this and look, we're in an odd time right now.
Yes.
You look at the security side of it, where, if somebody walked up to you and asked for all your personal information, you just say, get out of my face. Yet we go home and we give away all our private information online, right?
Right.
Well, we do the same thing. I see people forward things that I know are stories that somebody made up.
Right.
And I just step back and I go, I'm not going to respond to that.
Right.
Or something that I know is being debunked and it's still floating around out there. And I just shake my head and I'm not going to, what's the point? You can't argue with people like that.
Well, that's true. And of course, back in, the day when we were kids growing up, we always had that aunt that always wanted to fan the fire by somebody dying or sick.
No family
whatever.
Drama.
So, you had the family. Of course, you had the family drama, but now we have the national drama. So, really, society is thriving off of the drama. In fact, there's people that want to eat their popcorn and sit and see what's going to happen next. And so people get their jollies because they don't have anything in life else going on. They didn't make any provisions to save any money or anything like that. So they just want to see how it's going to blow them.
What's different now I keep hearing people go, well, if we make a mistake, we can always fix it.
Right.
Well, life's coming at us really fast now.
No.
And you look at what you and I were talking before the show, because I was telling you about this new imprimis issue that's out with the intelligence guy who's talking about how China has done everything. They scrape up. They've used Canada as a surrogate to steal our intellectual property.
Absolutely.
They're here. Right. They're in our community.
Yes,
they have these Confucius Institutes, or all of this goes back to the Chinese leadership. Right. You can't have a company. Your company gets to be a certain size. You have to allow party members to be on your board.
Right.
I mean, that's where this is. That's where we're going if we're not careful.
Well,
and it may not be redeemable if we make a bad choice.
Well, I'll tell you, I think we're at that point to where we served as the world's ATM. And the sad part about it is we had the politicians that weren't patriotic, and they sold us out thinking that we could heal from it. They weren't thinking collectively, they were thinking individually. So if somebody would steal, $1 million or sell out this country for $1 million, we would recover. But if 10,000 people started selling us out for $1 million, we may not recover. We're certainly not going to go back to the way that we grew up, and it appears to be a power that forces really an open society, because we have so much diversity today. The Constitution has changed a little bit. In other words, there's people that vote that our founding fathers, wanted landowners only to vote, not 16 or 18-year-old kids, that would vote, sex or whatever for them, or money out of the treasury. So it's too easy now that we've allowed socialism to come in and get money out of the treasury. And so people see that as a big thing.
free stuff is intoxicating.
It is. It can
but
be.
we look at, I was reading a story recently, it was a great piece, and it was one of the financial papers, about how Venezuela and Chile have actually swapped places.
Okay.
Where when Venezuela started tanking, Chile was going, oh yeah, we can take, and now they are like the gold star of South America.
Yeah,
they have their GDP is up there. Their some of their growth, economic wise, has rivaled ours.
Yeah,
you don't hear about Chile much during the pandemic because it's not a big deal to them.
Right. But we need to find the weaknesses that that divide this country, and then we need to find common purpose. Here again, I'm an old space guy, and it's back in the '60s. We had a young president, but yet we had common purpose.
But he challenged us.
He challenged. Right? That's exactly right. To be the greatest.
I don't know that John Kennedy would get elected today. It's kind of an interest, at least not for one party.
Right.
Anyway, more with Scott Shuttleman Phillips coming up.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
A guy who won because of his hair.
Yeah, there you go.
At least that was my mom voted for him for that.
Yeah, my grandmother did. Yeah, good-looking guy. Yeah. But his legacy is reaching out even today.
He challenged us. It's funny because there was a great piece I read not too long ago. Scott Shuttleman Phillips joining us. I read a piece, interestingly enough, an analysis of that last debate, where Nixon looked so. It was called was that the Checkers speech? Is that what it is?
Well, it was. It's where he had the after. His shave.
Like
the black and white TV set.
Yeah, it was weird.
Made him look a little bit antsy. Yeah.
He won the radio debate.
Yeah, he did because nobody saw him.
He lost the TV debate.
That's right.
So his words were good.
So it was an image.
But it was an image thing.
That's
really
exactly
strange.
right.
But again, you wonder if Kennedy could get elected or get nominated by the Democrats today.
Right.
It's become that stark a change.
Absolutely.
I want to get back to this whole idea of personal responsibility. I look at America where we are now, and I look at, and even my friends, there are certain, you have them too. I have friends because I value our friendship, I just don't talk politics.
Right.
Because I don't want that to be the only thing that defines us.
Right.
So because there are so many other things we can talk about.
Right.
Their parenting and my parenting weren't different at all in a lot of ways.
Right.
Because what is our job as parents? Our job as parents is to make those. It's basically what the mama birds. It is to prepare the bird to be able to leave the nest, and you have to make them prepared. You can't coddle them. You can't say, "Well, I'll always be." I hate look at how many helicopter parents are out there.
Right.
Now. Their kids 20, 21, and they're in the registrar's office screaming at the administration because they're not treating their kid fair. Let your kid fly on their own.
Right.
Come on.
Right. And you got to look at history, and you think about, and I'll throw this at it, is the fact that in history, the only president that skipped a presidency, can you remember who that was?
Grover Cleveland.
That's exactly right. You know what Grover Cleveland did? The first term, he said, I'm not going to give money to the American people because they'll only come accustomed to using it and will hurt their value moving forward. People at that point in time, that was a Democratic president that said, hey, if we give monies out, they'll perennially come back every year and their character will be lowered by that standard. He was not elected again, but they went through the period of time, 4 more years of that kind of thing, and then he was reelected. So the funny thing, if Trump doesn't get elected this time, it might be the fact we might have to go through finding out what the 4 years of hell is going to be, possibly.
That would be, again, historic. You bring up Cleveland.
Right.
That was an interesting campaign. First president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms.
Yeah, 18,
But the other thing about it was the first time they ever used the term clack. You know what a clack is?
Well, remind me.
The clack clack is people you hire in the crowd to be instigators, to be hecklers.
Well, that makes sense. Okay.
And that was the first use, apparently, first documented use of clacks.
Okay.
Because apparently Grover Cleveland had fathered an illegitimate child.
Right. He was a bachelor. He was actually a bachelor.
And the opposition hired clacks to stand in the crowd and cry, "Daddy! Daddy!" And that was the first use of clacks.
Oh,
That's
my gosh, your
them.
history is wonderful, Fred.
That election was, the whole term of this guy. We have a couple of presidents who were...
Well, I'll tell you, your history is right on. And the thing
it's
about...
speckled. I don't know all of them that well.
But you know pretty good history. And like I say, Grover Cleveland is an example of a Democratic president that said, hey, no money for the people, or especially farmers, for seed money. And then said, hey, it would be a bad precedent to set for this country because they'd be coming back year after year. So he knew something 100 years ago, and of course wasn't reelected, but then reelected 4 years later because he was right.
Do you remember Reagan's favorite president?
Well, Reagan's favorite president, everybody says Abraham Lincoln. But
Calvin Coolidge.
Okay, Calvin Coolidge.
Because Coolidge was before Hoover.
That's right,
really
before the Depression era.
And history got all that wrong because they said, Hoover was one way and FDR was totally opposite.
Right.
No, Hoover was the way Hoover was. He was a big meddler.
Yes, he was.
And then FDR just took Hoover's policies and put them in hyperdrive. Coolidge was the guy that gave us the Roaring 20s.
Yeah, there you go.
And he was, they accused him of, having an, open economy and all of that. But look at the prosperity he gave us.
Well, absolutely. We live it today with Social Security as as one of those offsets that people depend on.
Which came after.
Right. Well, which came after.
Came way after.
And of course, the famous thought of packing the court. With FDR with packing the court of nine.
Which he never actually did. He just threatened to
Right.
do.
But here again, we're in threat of that possibly. To have a guaranteed outcome to one party's decision always. And that's not the way this country is founded. But really, the presidents throughout the years in history always downplayed viruses and things like the influenza flu and things of that nature. A lot of presidents, didn't talk about it because they knew it was the Achilles tendon to the capitalistic society. Once you spook the American people in a capitalistic society, then you have a problem like what we have today with all the shutdowns and all the things that
you tell them to shut down, and then they're supposed to. Well, how are you supposed to do business?
Well, you take a guy in New York City, for example. Let's say his dad was running a restaurant for 47 years, and he retired, and he transferred that business over to his son that now is 47, that's had it 10 years. He's at the point now he has a home, he has a Land Rover, he has 2 kids in college, but this pandemic hit. And all of a sudden, his building got burned down. His 300 employees got sent home, and he's now financially ruined. So where do guys like that end up? Multiply him by 1 million people. Nostradamus, supposedly knew Hitler was coming, but he didn't know about a pandemic coming. It's probably one of the greatest. If we would have watched a James Bond, and my hat's off to Sean Connery, rest in peace. But the fact that if this was a Bond, if this was Goldfinger's goal to shut down and to turn off the American people, 40 million people unemployed, and to shut down New York City's businesses and bars and restaurants and stuff, if this would have been his goal rather than stealing the money from the gold, from Fort Knox, this would have been a spy thriller.
Which is really not where the gold is, they say.
Right. But the reality is,
there is no gold.
We're actually living with this pandemic. Are we going to be wearing a mask a year from now, 2 years from now? I see companies now that have formed to do it, to make these masks. So is it just going to be a style? Think like a hat and gloves were, back in the 60s. I mean, people get angry if you don't wear a mask today.
They talk about Trump being a disruptor.
Right.
But we've had them come along during their time. Lincoln was somewhat of a disruptor.
Very first Republican. Sure.
Andrew Jackson. I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday.
Absolutely.
Jackson, the establishment hated him.
Oh yeah.
He was against then they called it the Second National Bank, the predecessor to the Fed.
That's right.
He was against all these big institutional things that were going to hold the country back.
Right.
So people come along and is that is that God putting these people in position? You wonder, don't you?
Well, yeah. Here again, it could be predestined for this country to be great, and so it puts people in its place. Yeah,
we'll see. We'll know. We won't know tonight. I have a feeling.
Yeah.
More with Scott Shuttleman Phillips coming up. Scott Shuttleman Phillips joining us, and we've been talking a lot about are we evolving as a country, and I'm having trouble with this in that what is being offered. And look, I don't share how I'm voting on local stuff. I mean, obviously, at the top on the federal stuff, I'm a little more generous with my opinions and. People can kind of figure out where I'm voting.
Right.
But I mean, I've been with Trump the whole time because I think he's the disruptor.
Right.
It is one of those things, though. I have trouble. The reason I think Trump's going to win. Mm-hmm. And, I predicted it last time and everybody went, yeah, and I go, well, I get one thing right my entire life, I think because what the left is selling through the Democrat Party, which has been basically hijacked by the left.
That's right.
What they're selling, I don't think the average American is comfortable with going. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see in the next couple of days. We'll see.
That's the thought is people don't really know. It's the silent majority that have the opinions of what we lived, for the last 50 years. You stop and think about 5,000 years of man's recorded history. We were enslaved probably 4,900 of those years. It's really been in the last 244 years that we have this experiment, and we're dangling with it now.
And the founding fathers, in their brilliance, made it where we have to have 50 elections today.
That's right. Well, there you go. There you go.
Thank God.
Yeah, I hear you.
You don't want any power. Absolute power corrupts and all that stuff. Lord Acton was right.
That's human nature to do that.
One more. We'll get a little more philosophical.
Okay.
If we haven't already. Coming up. Scott Shuttleman Phillips with some final thoughts on, obviously, this election has generated a lot of interest because I'm being told, even Frank Barger yesterday was talking about our probate judge, said, look, it looks to be about 70% turnout. Wow. I think nationwide we're getting a lot of new voters.
Yes.
Now, where we're going to have the problems is in those counties, and we don't know where they are yet. We've heard there may be issues in those counties where you have 120 and 130% turnout.
Wow,
those are going to end up being issues.
Yeah.
Not here in Alabama necessarily, but some of these places maybe in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan. So we'll see.
Yeah, wow. That's something, yeah.
130. How do you get that?
Yeah,
I'd love to get 100. I'm running for office, and I'd love to get 130% of you voting for me.
That'd be beautiful, wouldn't
Isn't that something?
But, we talked about, the engine, and, I'm an old rocket guy, but the engine instability, of course, had a solution, that the Von Braun team did come up with a solution to actually organize all the high-pressure fuel that came out of those tanks, and it was millions of gallons. And so they actually took several $1 million and several months to really come up with a very simple fix. The very simple fix was a baffling system. So at the end of what we called the shower head where the fuel came out, we actually put a ring, like a pie-shaped ring around that spray area, and it actually organized. It did. Whenever the disorganized spray came out, it would hit the baffle system and line it back up, and then we would ignite it, and then of course the F1 engine did fire. So there was a solution, and we did go to the moon, obviously, 6 times and 12 men on the moon, and so there was an engineering solution. The political instability is actually getting proper information. I think the baffling system in that terminology could be is getting the right information, educating ourselves and getting the right information from the right people, and really have compassion for and find our common purpose. In other words, what are we have in common, not what we have in differences. And I think if we can find that, I know that's pie in the sky maybe, but if we can all reach down knowing we need the same things in life, is to find that common purpose. That'll be our baffling system.
I think part of this poke in the pig of disunity in this country,
right,
is really from our enemies like
It
China.
is. It is.
And they've already documented
Right.
funding out of these
Right.
consulates.
It costs them nothing.
And because the more they can disrupt us, the more we
Right.
distrust our
Well,
process.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's a little scary.
Well, it is, and we should be aware of that every day. We should be patriotic enough to really take care of our own people, and the fact that we do have enemies around the world, and our disorganization is their nuclear bomb to us, and is this COVID. In fact, COVID really had initiated from another country, and you can see what it's done to people now.
Yeah.
This
And
is just a taste.
either however this ends today,
Right.
or we find out in a few weeks, our enemies are still going to be our enemies.
Yeah,
and they're still going to be trying.
Absolutely. So we should be very vigilant. We should find our common purpose. That should be our battling system. So our political instability should be stable, and we should be able to go to the moon. We did. 50 years ago, 51 years ago, we should be able to go to the moon here in 2020. And I use that as a way of just saying we're going to be successful ultimately.
And then on to Mars as we go.
Well, there you go.
And I'm drinking the Honduran this morning, by the way, from our friends at Old Town Coffee, 511 Pratt Avenue. Forgot to mention them this morning.
Oh, you did?
Anyway, however it goes, we're going back to the moon. I hope so, anyway.
There you go.
Scott, as always, great seeing you, man.
Hey, Fred, thank you. Appreciate it. Love you.
Day, Rocket Man, I know he can blaze a trail and rock this world. She's a modern day Rocket Man, I know she can change the world. Rocket Girl.